very excited to see so many of you here. Today, I put together a presentation on some common challenges and ways that we can try to address them. So while each dog is an individual, we can go to the next slide, I'm so sorry. While each dog is an individual and we do need to treat them as such, I snagged this graphic from Animal Farm Foundation. I love this graphic a whole lot. So while each dog is an individual and we do need to treat them as such, there are common behaviors that they exhibit during times of stress, including adjusting to a new environment and routine. So we're going to hit on some of these common issues that we tend to see and common problems that we have, especially when we have some new arrivals. So the topics that we're going to hit on tonight are separation anxiety. We're going to look at some attention-seeking behaviors, and we're also going to discuss fearful. And when I'm talking about fearful, I'm talking like completely shut down dogs, and some strategies to help them out. So the first one we're going to look at is separation anxiety. So when we have a new dog who is adjusting to the routine of a home, or in some cases, we have dogs who are acclimating to home life in general when we get them, we often experience behaviors such as barking, whining, howling when crated or left alone. And that's totally natural to think that this is because they're being left alone and therefore it's separation anxiety. But separation anxiety is actually something that is pretty severe. So we're going to look at some of the hallmarks of true separation anxiety to give you guys a look at what that looks like, and then take a look at, if it's not separation anxiety, what else could be causing some of those behaviors. So one of the hallmarks of separation anxiety is destructive behaviors. And this doesn't include just, shredding a toy or something like that. This is going to be pretty severe, like you see in some of these pictures that I have on the slide. This can include breaking out of crates or the rooms that they are contained in, but it generally does advance beyond that. I know some of you have experienced having a dog who has what we call confinement stress, and they do break out of crates, but once they're out of the crate, they're totally fine. I've heard plenty of times, dogs that have broken out of the crate, but then you come home and they're just curled up on the couch and there's no other issue. They just got really stressed out by being confined in that crate. So true separation anxiety, the destructive behavior is going to go beyond the place that they are contained. A lot of it will be, chewing and clawing at like door jambs, entire doors, oftentimes places where you did exit. But it will also look like taking that out on their furniture and things like that. And this can be pretty severe, like oftentimes to the point of they don't care if they're hurting themselves in doing these behaviors. So, chewing and clawing and digging to the point where their gums are bleeding or their paws are cut up from what they were digging at. So it is pretty severe. It goes beyond just a little bit of destruction. It's like you come home and there was a tornado that ripped through your house. Some of the other hallmarks are panting or hypersalivating when left alone, pacing or inability to settle, using the bathroom in the house when they are otherwise housebroken. Howling, whining, and barking, yes, are included. But one of the points that you can look for to kind of help you know if it is true separation anxiety or if it's something else is that this is going to be a pretty consistent behavior throughout the time they're left alone. So, you know, when neighbors are reporting that like the entire time you were gone, they didn't stop howling, things like that. Most dogs, if they do bark or whine or cry or howl when you initially leave the house, they generally stop within 10 to 20 minutes of being left alone. But for dogs who do have separation anxiety, it's going to be continuous. So that's kind of one of the things that can help you distinguish if it's really separation anxiety or maybe they're just stressed by that leaving because you just left. But it's not to where they can't settle. The other thing to remember is that true separation anxiety is extreme, and it often requires medication in addition to lots of practice with a trainer to help manage the dog's stress level when no one is home. So a lot of that looks like working with the trainer on counter conditioning. A lot of times you will practice doing, because with separation anxiety, a lot of dogs start to become stressed when they see you participating in the behaviors that you typically do before you leave the house, such as gathering your keys and your purse, putting on your shoes, just they catch on to our routine. So they start to notice those behaviors that we do before we leave the house. And oftentimes they will start to get stressed when we begin participating in those behaviors. And that's when the stress will start. So then by the time you're actually walking out of the house, they're all the way through the roof of stress level. So a lot of the counter conditioning deals with participating in some of those behaviors you would normally do before you leave the house and then not actually leaving. And then working up to a point where like, okay, now that's no longer an indicator to your dog that you're going to be leaving them alone. And so now you're going to try doing some of those behaviors, but then you do walk outside of the house, but then you come right back. So it is a lot of practice to kind of decrease that relationship that they have between those behaviors that you do before you leave and being left alone. So trying to make that relationship non-existent as much as possible. And we can go on to the next slide. So if it's not separation anxiety, what else could it be? So say you don't feel like your dog is meeting all of those requirements, and they're not really as extreme as separation anxiety is. So what could it be? One thing it could be is boredom. Many dogs just need something to do. If they're not used to being left alone, say they're coming from a shelter environment where they were alone all the time, but now they like having human presence more often. Now they don't really know what to do with themselves when they're left alone. They might resort to some of the behaviors that they did in the shelter environment. And honestly, frankly, there's not many choices when you're in the shelter environment. That's why we do see a lot of dogs participate in behaviors like spinning or things like that, because that's one of the only things they can do. So it could just be boredom and they don't know what they're supposed to do during that quiet time and that alone time. So providing them something to do and an outlet for when they are left alone can oftentimes help to eliminate their stress level, in addition to making sure that they have enough mental and physical exercise. We already talked a little bit about crate or confinement stress. So sometimes it could just be the crate or wherever they are being kept. They feel like they are in an enclosed tight space, and that's what's causing the stress, not actually being left alone. And sometimes it's honestly that they just need more time to acclimate to the new routine. We tend to forget just how stressful a move on transport is to a dog. They're going from what they knew, even if it wasn't the greatest of environments. They're going from what they knew onto this big, scary transport truck, driving long, long hours, and then suddenly they're being handed off to this new person who they don't know, and they're suddenly at this new place. It's a lot of stress, and it can definitely just take a while to decompress from that stress and then learn the routine. So sometimes you might see them bark and howl and cry when they're crated just because they don't know what to do, because they don't know the new routine yet. So let's look at some strategies we can try. And once we've tried some of these strategies, then we can kind of know, okay, these strategies didn't really work, so maybe this really is separation anxiety and we need to try something more extensive, such as getting them seen by a vet to see if we can start some anti-anxiety medication. So some things to try are to, like I said, make sure that they have something to do when they are left alone. One of my favorite suggestions is to utilize a stuffed frozen Kong. It's really easy to vary what you put in the Kong to A, keep it interesting for the dog, and B, tailor it to what they like. I know that I use a Kong for my dog just because he would get upset when we initially would leave, jump on the door as we left and be upset. But now he's like, oh, sweet, you're leaving. It's time for my Kong. And he goes and he lays on the couch and he waits for his Kong. He's like, okay, I'm ready. And, a lot less stressed when we leave now because he has that to do. So not only is it a tasty treat and it takes a while for them to get through, especially when they're frozen, but it does also encourage them to participate in licking behavior, which is a naturally stress relieving behavior for the dog. So huge points. That's why I love a Kong. So a couple of tips to remember about a Kong is to make sure you're using one that's size appropriate. We have dogs of all sizes come through our rescue, so we definitely want to make sure that we have one that is appropriately sized for the dog, because, if they're too small for the dog, then there's the potential that they could try to swallow it, which is not great. And if they are too big, then they can't get all of the tasty snacks out of it. So then they might just get frustrated because they can't get their little tongue down to the bottom of the Kong. Something else to remember is that the colors of the Kongs do mean things. Red is like their normal toughness level, and they are pretty sturdy. My dog uses the red ones, but he's not a heavy chewer. He does like to shred plushies occasionally, but most of the time it's when we're engaging with him. So red works great for him. Black is for your super chewers. It's a bit tougher. So if you've got, a lot of our, if we've got some pitties that come through, they often need the super chewer ones. So that's the black ones. And then you do see they also come in light blue and light pink, and those are designed for puppy teeth. So not ideal to give to an adult dog because they might rip that one up. They are a little bit softer for our puppies who are still growing and developing. What I do want to remind everyone of is when you are selecting enrichment to leave for your dog, when you are not there to observe them, make sure that we're not leaving enrichment items that could break, splinter, or be swallowed, such as rawhide, chews, or bones. Because you don't want to come home and see that your dog has, gotten toward the end of a bone, so then they swallowed that last little piece, or anything like that. We definitely don't want them to have a medical emergency when they're not there, when we are not there to help them. It is also key that whatever you are leaving for the dog, when you're trying to suss out if it is separation anxiety or not. And this does work as a tool when you do determine that it is separation anxiety, is that whatever enrichment that you are using when you leave should be reserved for when they are left alone. So then it should be a very special treat that they get only at times when you are leaving, which increases their positive association with that that toy and that enrichment and you leaving. So it helps to then also decrease the stress of you leaving because they get this special thing. So it kind of works twofold that way, to give them something really positive, but it's also something really positive that they only get when you leave. So then you leaving becomes less stressful because they have this positive outlet. So then as soon as you arrive home, that should be picked up and go away. Other things that we can try are practicing crating when you are home for short periods of time, just to make sure to kind of check and see, is it just the crate that's stressing you out? Is crating just becoming an indicator for when you're leaving and that's why they're stressing out? Is because anytime they're crated, you're going to leave, and you leave for a lengthy period of time. So if we only utilize the crate when we go to work, that becomes a signal that you're about to leave for a long period of time. So if we practice for short periods of time, a lot of times I'll recommend, especially for our like adolescent dogs that come in, recommend utilizing it to give them some structured breaks throughout the day, because they honestly are still puppies at those ages and they still need to take breaks and take naps. But I feel like a lot of them end up having like a fear of missing out and they just want to keep playing and keep playing. But then that's when they tend to get into some of the undesirable behaviors, both with us and with other pets, is when they are too tired to communicate appropriately, but they're still trying to continue to play. So giving them a structured break is very helpful for learning that calm time is also good time. And utilizing the crate for that can also help decrease that association between crate time equals you leaving for a long stretch of time, because it could just be a break. The other good thing that you can do is to leave that crate door open so that they can kind of go in and out of it on their own and kind of start to see it more as their space and as a safe space rather than a punishment. Because a lot of times if they love to be with us, taking away us is a punishment in a way. So if we give them more positive associations with the crate and allow them to see it as their space, that's definitely going to help as well. Again, we also want to ensure that our dogs are getting plenty of mental and physical enrichment. So whether that means that you incorporate, every dog is different. So the enrichment meals that I might suggest for one dog might differ to another dog. If you've got a dog who loves to use their nose, those snuffle mats and things like that are going to be much more beneficial to them. But if they're a dog who's like, snuffle mat what? You might try something like a frozen bowl. And that would just be, a meal with some snacks in it, and then top it off with some broth and diluted with water and then frozen. And that can keep them busy for longer and use some different parts of their brain. Exactly. We do have a great recording on enrichment, so please see that for more ideas. So introducing those types of mental and physical exercise can also help make sure that we know, okay, I know they got a good walk today. I know they got to do a puzzle toy and that still didn't help, or that did solve the issue. Or it made it not as bad when I left. You can also try using a baby gate over a crate if you think that it might be confinement stress. And now we're going to move on to our discussion of attention-seeking behaviors. I'm also going to turn the light on in my office because it's getting a little dark. Hold on one second. Ooh. Okay, so attention-seeking behaviors. So many dogs, particularly our young dogs and our adolescent dogs, will participate in certain behaviors such as jumping, mouthing, and even barking to elicit attention from us. Just like toddlers, any attention is attention. So even telling them no or pushing them off when they jump on us is us engaging with them in some way. So they've gotten something out of it, so it's a win. A lot of times I find that dogs who jump up, who people push off, they're like, oh, cool, this is a fun game. Let me do that again. That was fun. So it kind of doesn't really help. One of the best strategies to combat these behaviors is to completely ignore them and not give them any attention when they participate in these behaviors. So what that may look like is if a dog is jumping on you, say they are jumping on you to greet you, we're going to back away or turn away from them so that they are forced down instead of us putting our hands on them. And then as soon as they have forepaws on the ground and are giving us a slightly calmer behavior, we're going to immediately praise them and pet them and give them that attention that they were looking for. The attention is the reward in that situation because that's what they were looking for in the first place. So that's going to increase that association between having 4 feet on the ground and getting attention, while at the same time helping them realize that jumping does not get them anything. So that's why it's like zero engagement whatsoever. Same with mouthing, you know, if they're mouthing at you and you're like, stop it, and pushing them away, you know, that just becomes a game and that's all sorts of fun. So removing ourselves from the situation so that they can't participate in that behavior, and then rewarding as soon as they stop. A lot of dogs, it kind of takes a little bit for them to get the hang of what it is we are wanting them to stop. So I usually do with mouthing, try to do a few repetitions. So if I was petting them and that's when they started mouthing, I'll put my hands up. Now you're being calm. As long as they're not persisting, I'll then, you know, start with the petting again. As soon as they put that mouth on me, remove my hands again. It might take a few times for them to actually catch on to what they're doing to make your hands go away. But once it clicks, then they've got it. The other important factor in dealing with attention-seeking behaviors is that everyone in the household and everyone who comes in contact with the dog has to interact with them in the same way. Just like toddlers, again, if one person allows them and rewards that that behavior with that attention, that's going to make them want to try it with every new person because, well, that person let me do it and it worked one time, so now I need to try it every time and see if I can get away with it. So that's why, you know, especially when I speak with adopters, sometimes they are a little bit timid about enforcing what they're working on with their new dog with, you know, family that comes over to meet the dog or things like that. But it is so important that they advocate for their dog and that they advocate for what they're working on with their dog. Because the more that one person gets away with it, and I'm sure that you guys have heard it constantly. I know I've heard it. You know, your dog jumps up, somebody apologizes. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay. And they're petting the dog, right? That's just going to break, you know, that training. And it's going to like put that one time that it worked in their head. Now, yes, whatever training that you have been working on with them, they may respond faster to anything that you have put on a cue of like, oh, okay, you're right, I'm not supposed to do that. However, it may mean that they try it with every new person instead of understanding that, no, this is not something that works with anyone, like across the board. All right. Now we are going to get to our last topic of the evening, which is fearful dogs to the point of shutdown. So what does a shutdown dog look like? Again, many dogs, when they have first arrived to a new home, whether that's off of transport or whether it's moving from one home to another, demonstrate some fearful behaviors. And some dogs do go as far as to shut down when they arrive to a new place. So a lot of times, I know that many of you have seen this with some of your fosters that have come through your houses, hiding in the corner of a room or their crate that they're in. This will often include hiding their faces and making themselves look as small as possible. It could also include not eating or drinking right away and not using the bathroom. They also may avoid looking at you, who is their new caretaker, especially avoiding eye contact, because eye contact in the dog behavior world is very scary and intimidating. So they're trying to be as least intimidating as possible. Like, I swear I'm just like trying to be invisible and I'm not a threat. Please don't hurt me. So when a dog is this scared, you know, all we want to do is snuggle them and comfort them and tell them everything is going to be all right. But unfortunately, what's actually more important is to give them space. So we're going to move on to our next slide, which is things that we can do to help them adjust. So the best thing that we can do is to be patient with them, and do whatever we can to allow them choice in their situation. I know it can be really scary when you're like, oh God, the dog's not eating. Oh, they're not going to the bathroom. And you may want to get them to come out of their crate so that they get the opportunity to go outside and go to the bathroom. But honestly, all that's going to do is add additional stress if we have to force the issue. It's also really important to remember that a dog is not going to let themselves starve. I have encountered numerous dogs in the shelter environment that when they first arrive, they do not eat for the first couple of days, and they will hold their urine and feces and not go to the bathroom just because they are that scared. I know a lot of us have been in extremely stressful situations in our lives, and when you're not comfortable, you don't want to eat. Times of stress, no thank you. I actually feel slightly nauseous, you know. And, you know, we've all experienced stress to that point, so we have to really kind of put ourselves in the dog's shoes and understand that that is okay. They're not going to let themselves starve. The more that we can do to just reduce their stress level and allow them to make the choice of when they feel comfortable enough to do these normal behaviors, that's going to be better for them in the long run. So we don't want to force them into any situations, because with a dog who is so fearful and so shut down, you could actually elicit some negative responses because they don't feel like they have a choice. So the more that we can allow them control and let them make their own choices, the better it will be to bond with us in the end. So patience and giving them time and space is actually the best thing we can do for them. Often what I would like to do with, and my experiences is from working with dogs in the shelter who are fearful and scared and don't want to come out of their kennels. Because honestly, I always saw it as, if the dog is already putting themselves in the corner, I'm not then going to encroach on their space and make them feel more threatened, because then they may feel the need to escalate the situation and maybe participate in some behaviors such as growling, or if I tried to throw a leash on them when they're already cornering themselves, they might snap at me. So I want them to bond with me and make the choice to come up to me. So what I would do is I would sit outside of their kennel, and you can do this in the space in which your dog is in when they first come and they are first in their decompression time. You can sit in their space, but leave a little distance so that they don't feel like everything is closing in on them. Leave a little bit of space. I used to sit with my turned sideways to them so that I'm pretending you don't exist. I'm not actually looking at you, even though I'm looking at you out of my periphery. And that might make them feel, because again, eye contact to dogs is very scary until they feel that they want to give that, because that's actually something that's unique to the dog-human relationship, is that soft eye contact. It's not really normal for dog-to-dog behavior. So we want to make sure that we're not giving them eye contact. We're going to avoid that eye contact and just kind of watch them out of the corner of our eye. And we're going to talk softly to them. I used to tell them, things like, we're going to be friends. You just don't know it yet. I promise I'm here to be your friend. We'll get there one of these days, just talking softly to them. In a way that may help reduce their stress level and get them acclimated to the sound of my voice. I would also pair that with tossing some high value treats. And even if your dog is not eating regular food at this time, still go ahead and toss high value treats. They may not eat them when you're there. They may eat them when you leave, but that will then increase the association between, hey, whenever that person shows up, there then ends up being some tasty snacks around. So that might help to encourage them to come closer to you next time that you visit, things like that. The other things that I would generally do when working with a fearful dog, so when I'm tossing the treats, I then, if they're starting to come closer to me, I will make them start to work for it and make them come closer to me to get those treats, just to see how far they're coming along and how they're progressing, eventually offering one from my open hand. And literally, I would be not looking at the dog. It's hard to demo here. Not looking at the dog and just like, here's the treat. And usually I would have thrown one like right in front of me on the floor. And if they took that one, then try the one out of the hand and see, because then that will encourage them to sniff you and investigate you in an appropriate way. And then if all of that is going well, then I would try a touch. I completely avoid overhead motions with any new dog, but particularly fearful dogs. That can then just be very, very scary. Instead, I like to start with the shoulder or the chest, and I do what I call the 5-second rule, and pet for a couple seconds and then stop and see how they respond, because sometimes they'll just stay because they're tolerating the touch. Sometimes they do want you to continue, so you can see if they look back down at your hand when you stop. That could be an indicator that they didn't actually want you to stop and they were enjoying the petting. Of course, anytime that they start leaning, that's a great sign. And then the next place I try after shoulder and chest are going okay is I start to do some of the under chin scritches, because that can be a really, really good feeling. And then when a fearful dog starts to lean their head on your hand, that's just one of the best feelings in the world. And you're like, okay, you are definitely starting to trust me now. So a lot of it is just being patient, giving them some time, giving them some space to make the decisions on their own. Because anytime that they're allowed to make choices on their own, that's going to be better in the long run. They're going to feel better about it. You're going to feel better about it. They're going to have more confidence, rather than anytime we force them could actually have them reverse back the other direction. So those are just some basics of what I try with fearful dogs. I think I saw something in the chat that was a question about any suggestions for a dog that is only fearful of one person in the household. Okay, so I do see a response that says, yes, have that person leak treats. Again, have them practice, because sometimes it's just that they haven't been able to develop a bond with that one person. Maybe that person hasn't put in the same amount of time and effort that other people in the household have. So sometimes it could definitely just be that they haven't spent enough one-on-one time actually working to build a bond, because building a bond doesn't happen overnight. You know, a new dog entering the house isn't necessarily going to automatically bond with everybody, but it is going to bond with people who make the effort. Now, yes, you do have those dogs who walk into a house and are just friends with everybody immediately. And again, every dog is an individual, but when you are dealing with a fearful dog, it's really important that everybody puts in the effort to develop bonds with those dogs. Another point that I would like to add is, oftentimes with small dogs, people think that to introduce them to a new person, they should hold the dog, but that completely takes away that dog's opportunity for choice and can make them escalate. I'm sure that you guys have seen videos of that make me cringe and make Cinder cringe of, people who are holding small dogs and the dog is clearly trying to communicate that they don't want to be pet, and the person just keeps doing it because they think it's funny that the dog is snarling and barking and snapping at them and biting them even, but the dog is only, less than 5 pounds, so it's not actually doing that much damage. It just hurts my heart because I know that, that dog is stressed and they are trying to communicate. They are trying to set a boundary that they're not comfortable and they're just not being listened to. So one of the best things that you can do for a little dog that you're trying to introduce is, again, make them feel that they have the choice. You don't have to meet this person. I honestly have people who have little defensive dogs. I say, just ignore the dog when you first have people come in. Have them totally ignore that dog and pretend they don't exist. Because then, you'll notice the little dogs will come up and sniff you when they think you're not paying attention. So I see that you say that your fearful dog isn't very treat motivated. Okay, I think Cinder beat me to it. But yes, anything, and especially, again, same type of thing with when you are leaving a snack that you only leave when you are leaving the house. If you have this person that the dog is fearful of, have a treat that's specifically for them to associate with that person. That could then increase their positivity around that person, because this person always has this awesome snack and I only get it from this person. So that could definitely help to increase. Bacon, roast chicken. You can get one of those rotisserie chickens and shred that up. A lot of dogs like that. You can boil chicken. A lot of dogs I've met don't turn their nose up at Vienna sausages if you want to try those. And they're easy to grab because they're already canned for you. So any of those types of things, think outside of the box. Also remember, these are not things that you are counting on for being a source of nutrition for your dog. So it's okay for them to get small amounts of some of these things that they see as high value. Does anybody else have any questions? We have 15 minutes and I'm happy to answer any other questions people have.
Krista, I put a question in the chat for you.
Oh, I must have missed it. Does it help?
Tammy has a question too.
Okay. I see Tammy's. Does it help for the dog to see you interacting with, being excited with that person? So what I would say is better than being excited is just like being calm. Like, this person's a chill person. I'm relaxed. You're relaxed. Like, anything you can do to be neutral, because excitement can quickly become like overstimulation. So the more we can do to have it just be neutral. I always say, like, have somebody come in, just go ahead and like sit on your couch or sit at a table and just start chatting calmly. Just very normal, very quiet, calm. The more we can do that's calm and not in any sort of heightened state of arousal, that's going to help your dog kind of be like, okay, my person's calm, so I guess this person isn't anything to be concerned about. And let me see if I can find your other question. Only for one person. I feel like I'm missing this other question. Oh, does music help? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So music or calm background noise definitely does help. Some dogs seem to respond better to it than others. Again, that's one of those, each dog is an individual type thing. But sometimes having some background noise, I've even heard at some shelters that they will put on an audiobook for the dog, and that helps to reduce stress just because they're hearing a person's voice, and that can be calming. So that can also definitely help to reduce stress. I know that some dogs do well with like a sound machine and just having some gentle background noise. And I do believe that there are some CDs that you can buy there's one that's called the Dog's Ear, I believe, that are specifically geared to help reduce a dog's stress when they're left alone. And I do believe that if you look on YouTube, that there's some channels that if you search like background noise for a dog, that you will find some like long, lengthy ones to put on, which are great for when you're leaving the house, because then you don't have to, worry that it's going to cut off. Oh, Spotify has dog relaxation music too. Great to know, Betsy. Thank you so much. Through the Dog's Ear is what it's called. So yes, sound is also a great a great way to stimulate their brain, but also can help to get those calming effects. Something else I talked about in the enrichment discussion was using scent enrichment. So that not only looks like utilizing some things like snuffle mats and things like that to engage a dog's sense of smell for when they're eating, but you can also utilize things. There is a spray form of Adaptil, which is pheromone based for dogs, and that can help reduce a dog's stress level. They have it in a spray form. They have, I believe, collars that you can put on. They also have a plug-in that's a scent. Doesn't really seem like much of a scent to me, but I know that the dog's nose is way better and it's not geared toward me. It's geared toward the dog. The other great one that can help to reduce stress that I'm aware of, I know that there's a couple of essential oils that can reduce stress, but lavender diluted is really good for dogs as well. So you can spritz it on a blanket that you're leaving with them, or even just out and around. So that can help to calm their levels too. Just be sure if you are going to use any essential oils, double check how they affect the animals, because sometimes there is a difference in between how they affect us and how they affect our pets. And B, make sure you're using the proper dilution for your dog or your cats that is pet safe versus what is safe for us. Because those dilutions can differ. So please make sure to do your research before you use those, and use a website that you trust. Anything that is by a veterinarian or something like that. I would trust anything that is approved by ASPCA for anything like that. And when in doubt, always ask your vet.
And Ginger had a question.
We need to use a high value treat. No, so the question is, so we need to use a high value treat per anxiety, one for separation anxiety and one for that certain person. Not necessarily. So what I'm saying by that is like, so say you utilize a Kong for separation anxiety, that's going to be something that's, going to take them a while and things like that. And yes, should be specific for times that you're leaving them alone. And I'm not saying that every dog is going to have all of these problems. So you may just only be dealing with, a dog that seems to have a separation issue. So you kind of want to help reduce their stress level. So having something that's specific to when they leave and is something that's going to take them longer, since the idea is that it's going to last them for a little while. Because oftentimes most dogs, it's just that initial period of time when we first leave that is the most stressful. Once we're gone for a little bit, it's like, oh, okay, like I got this now. So it's more being able to keep them occupied. So that's why I like to recommend using something like a Kong. And when we are able to give them something that they associate with those specific times that would normally be a stressor for them, if it's then associating it with this specific thing that's positive, that's going to help them a lot more. And when we associate when it's only given at those times, that's going to strengthen that relationship. So I'm not saying that it would be like forever that one person can only give that treat. If it's dealing with, someone who they are scared of, I'm saying like you could reserve it for, say the dog is fearful of new people, then you could have a treat that you would drop for the dog, and that would come from these new people but be specific to new people. So those I would expect to be treats that you would be able to hand your dog and have them eat rather readily, instead of something like leaving them with something like a Kong when you're leaving the house. And then Tammy, did you have something else?
Yeah, sorry. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how do we do this to people when they are writing comments and almost like a checklist, of what to work through, but also how to describe it, like details, because like now that I have, like I'm realizing the temperaments, right? And no matter how much I say the dog doesn't have separation anxiety, everybody label it and done. Rather than describing it.
Yes, 100%, Tammy. That's one of the big reasons why I wanted to discuss what true separation anxiety looks like, is we want to make sure we're not labeling our dogs, because when we label a dog as honestly anything, when we slap a label, that can then cause a possible adopter to totally skip over your dog. So they might be thinking the hallmark separation anxiety, that picture of the dog with its head through the lower part of the door because it chewed through the whole bottom part of the door. So if you put in your dog's bio that they have separation anxiety, rather than describing they do bark when you leave the house, but they settle, utilizing a Kong or whatever it may be, is helping. When we are describing what the dog is actually, the behaviors we're seeing from the dog, that's going to help a person understand a lot better than if we label, this dog has separation anxiety. They might just skip over your dog because they are thinking that it's really severe, and it may not be the case. So we just want to avoid labeling the dog, period. We also want to avoid using labels such as using the word aggression at all, even if we're saying has not displayed aggression or this dog is not aggressive. Let's just take that word out of people's mouths, because so many people have a negative association with that word that they see the word in there and they're like, well, why did you need to say they're not aggressive? Should I be assuming that they are? So rather than that, we want to, describe them in what we are seeing from the dog, like has met and been social with dogs, has been social with cats, hasn't met a person they haven't liked, because at the same time, when we put labels, that then also leaves room for if the adopter has a different experience with the dog, coming back and saying, well, you said that this dog wasn't aggressive, or something like that, if they had an incident occur in their home or something else happens. So we want to make sure that we are describing what we're seeing in the home rather than putting labels, period. So I even say, like, I don't love saying that this dog is super sweet, because yes, that's like something we automatically go to. But what we want to do is we want to describe, like, this dog is really affectionate, loves to cuddle with us. We want to describe what we're seeing from them throughout the routine, like in the time that they have been in our foster home, they haven't had any accidents. So that's not to say that dog might not have an accident when they change their routine, So we just want to make sure that we're not using any labels like that, and we're really describing what we're seeing. Yes, exactly, George. You know, aggression is an instant turnoff. Explain. Yep, there are, exactly. There's very few truly aggressive dogs, but as soon as we even plant that word in people's brains, it just, even if we say pairing it with not, let's just not use the word at all then, and let's describe what we are seeing, that they've been social or things like that. Descriptive language is always, always best. And also, again, not making any promises. You know, if we say something cute like guaranteed to keep you smiling and laughing, that's perfectly fine. But we don't want to be making any guarantees about a dog's behavior, because some things could be different in a different home and in a different environment. So we really want to make sure that we are framing it as like, in my current foster home, this is what the experience has been, you know.
Well, we are out of time. No more questions. Thank you so much. Everyone else.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it.